Duke basketball beat George Mason last night. That's not news. We talked about it during the break. There is something that we've come up with that is better as a lesser than a red flag, right? Red flag would be like, ooh, concern. Something lesser than that, I spitballed before the break as a pink flag, just something where like the water or the color had run a little bit.
Yeah, toned down a little bit.
And Dennis went, that should have been a yellow caution flag. And I went, you know what? That's a much better idea.
Yeah.
So a yellow caution flag that popped up during the George Mason game. And it's something that I've noticed a few times. I've said on air a few times. There might be a bit of an overdependence on Cooper Flagg, which it's a caution flag because if you're going to depend on somebody, the number one recruit, overwhelming favorite to be the next number one draft pick, is a good one to be like overly dependent on, right? Is, our pass game isn't great, so we have to lean on the run a lot, but we're the Philadelphia Eagles and we have the number one run blocking offense in Saquon Barkley. It's like, you know what? If you're going to have to be overly dependent on your run game, fine. And from, a surface level, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Flagg last night had 24, 9, and 4 with 3 steals and a block. That's 24 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block. Depend on that guy all you want. But the thing that kind of jumped out to me, he was 7 for 20 shooting. Now, I don't mind a shooter shooting. I don't mind, hey, if I'm cold, I'm going to shoot my way out of this. I don't mind that. The issue I have is they only took 56 shots as a team. He took over 35% of their team's shots to get those 24 points. If there's a night where he's just off, keep shooting to confirm you're off. But then if there's a point, like turn around and go, hey, we got other guys to score. We got all these 5 stars around me. We brought back Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster for a reason. We went to the transfer portal to these guys for a reason. Con Knippel was 0 for 4 from 3. Common Malawash scored 6 points on 6 free throws, 0 for 1 from the field. Like when Cooper Flagg is having a day where he's going to shoot 7 for 20, I would like for the other high pedigree players to have better days than they had, especially against George Mason. Right? If you're playing an elite team and you got a number one defender on you and they're kind of daring Cooper Flagg to beat him, all right, fine. George Mason isn't that. They're not awful, but they're not that. Jon Scheyer after the game talked about George Mason being a good test.
These guys, if you see them on paper, they're an ACC team. In terms of their ranking on, if you look on KenPom, if you look at anything they've done, and then you see the eye test, right. And physically, they look like an ACC team, And so we had a ton of respect for them coming into this, and the score may look like there's a big margin. It didn't feel easy to me. Right. It felt every possession in this game was a fight, and it was hard to gain separation, which we finally did in the second half there. But I think it's a credit to our defense. It's a credit to the competitive spirit of our guys.
Their defense is always good, and that's something they can lean on. That's something that I'm okay with them leaning on because it appears to be stable. I want them to have a little bit better plan if Flagg has an off day, because I think he will. Not a ton of them, but you just don't want it to be poorly timed. I talked about the second round for Carmelo Anthony on Syracuse's run, where he's the centerpiece as a true freshman. Second round of the tournament, he had an off day. 3 other guys stepped up, one off the bench, Jerry McNamara, Hakeem Warwick, and Syracuse gets the win anyway. Third round, NCAA tournament, Carmelo's back to being him. They go all the way through and get the title. I do want to also point this out. When I say no one else was in an offensive rhythm, that's excluding Isaiah Evans. Isaiah Evans off the bench, he went 3 for 6 from 3, 3 for 6 overall for 9 points. 0 for 2 in the first half from deep, but had a 5-minute stretch in the second half where he went 3 for 3. It's not, I'm getting ahead of this. I'm not comparing him as a shooter to Steph Curry at all. That is unfair to just about anybody. But there is a feeling when like Steph Curry hits 2 in a row where you want to text your friends and be like, are you watching the Warriors? Because we might be seeing something. There is the diet, caffeine, sugar-free version of that with Isaiah Evans, where when he hits the first, you're like, all right, well, I'm not changing the channel here. I was going to flip him back and forth between games, but I got to see if he's on one because he's done it a few times where it's like he hits one and then all of a sudden it's 5 minutes later and he's got 3 or 4 threes. That is something that, I keep saying they need to play him more. And eventually it's just the numbers are going to force Jon Scheyer to play him more. So Isaiah Evans is the one. Even though he doesn't play as much, he's playing a little bit more, doesn't play as much as some other guys. He is somebody that I think you can lean on when Flagg has an off day. Maybe that's his role. We have Flagg talking about Isaiah Evans after the game right here.
He just opens up the floor so well with his ability to just come off screen, set his feet, and knock down shots. So he's such a skilled player in that way. He can do so much. He can really drive it, shoot it, and his defense has come along really well this year for us. So for him just to be able to come in and be confident, knock down shots is huge.
It is huge, and it was huge last night, even though they could have beat George Mason with probably their C- game. But the win is the win, and the concern is the concern, and Isaiah Evans is a flamethrower. His words, not mine.
Their final test going into ACC play.
That was their final test.
Yeah, so that was their final test going into ACC play. They got Georgia Tech, if I remember correctly, is their next game.
They usually
play Carolina close.
I was going to say they usually have a nice little break before ACC play. You start to see how teams like to schedule.